And joining us now in studio is Elizabeth Tsukrov, a Syria researcher at the Forum for Regional Thinking. Good evening to you. And Owen Alterman just filed this wonderful report, our foreign affairs correspondent. So, unlike the contrary focus, we're going to start looking at the Middle East, as you did in your report, and see how exactly the Middle East panned in to yesterday's debate. First of all, how much do you think, Owen, how significant was Syria in those 90 minutes?
Well, remember, Michal, in the first debate, Syria wasn't mentioned at all. The word was not uttered. So it definitely came back in this debate. Look, it's a 90-minute debate. It's a sprawling debate on issues ranging from healthcare to grabbing of genitals to Russia to Syria.
Beginning with grabbing of genitals.
There was a lot of discussion of grabbing of genitals. So it's a sprawling debate on all sorts of issues. It's not a think tank panel. Given that, it was a fairly in-depth discussion. We got to see these two candidates put forward, each of them, frankly, a coherent view of what they think should be done in Syria, and a different one, and voters got to see and to be able to judge.
Elizabeth, what's your take on the policy that they laid out, each one of them?
So the policy suggested by Clinton is pretty much what she's been talking about for quite a while. There is a kind of a debate within her team exactly about what steps need to be taken in Syria, whether a no-fly zone, more support for the Arab rebels there. But it's a consensus issue that we need to support the Kurds, who are, secular, and fight ISIS, and don't get us in trouble with Assad because they don't fight him. On the other hand, Trump did present a very coherent plan about Syria, one that is very much in line with the Russian policy on Syria, which is consistent with his, kind of rhetoric about Putin and praising him, and completely contradicting what his deputy Pence said in the VP debate,
throwing him under the bus.
Exactly. It was complete contradiction, and of course, this policy by Trump, the statements that he made there were absolutely not true. The Assad regime and Iran and Russia are not prioritizing ISIS in any way. They are concentrating their efforts against the Syrian rebels. The aim is to destroy the opposition and then create a situation by which the only options are Assad or ISIS, and then the international community would support Assad to fight ISIS.
But how important do you think Syria is to the U.S. vote, Owen? And how much can the next administration really influence as far as the current U.S. policy?
Two great questions. First of all, look, I don't think that many votes are going to be won or lost in this election on Syria policy, but it is a platform for these two candidates to talk about wider themes in foreign policy. What was the skinny on the Syria debate? What is the soundbite? What is the talking points from Hillary Clinton's perspective? Donald Trump, you're soft on Russia. Donald Trump's message to Hillary Clinton, you're soft on ISIS. And those two issues, particularly the ISIS one, are more resonant in American political life and are things that wider swaths of voters will be interested in. Look, as a general matter, foreign policy in this election cycle has been a much more prominent topic of discussion than it's been in past presidential election cycles, and it's interesting to think about why. As for the second, look, this is a very complex conflict that does not have easy answers. There are no easy solutions for U.S. policy, something the Obama administration has discovered well over the past 7.5 years. So it's not really clear what either of these candidates could do to dramatically change the course in Syria. To really get to a decisive outcome that's in accordance with U.S. interests, it would take an Iraq-scale invasion. The costs outweigh the benefits, so there's not much that can be done. The best that can be done is to put forward these two very different sets of ideas and let the public decide.
Andy, and what's your take as far as Syria panning out?
I think it's absolutely true that the conflict there is so complex. An intervention in Syria could have gone way easier if it was done, when Syrians originally asked for it, went out into the streets, millions of people, and asked for it at the end of 2011, when there were no jihadis in Syria, when it was just a popular uprising. There were barely any armed men there at the time. Now Russia is there, Iran is there, tens of thousands of foreign Shia jihadists and foreign Sunni jihadists. So it's much more complex, but there are still things that can be done. The Arab rebels in Syria have proven themselves a reliable force to take out ISIS. Just today, they took out large swaths in northern Aleppo, and they are moderate, and they should be supported. Of course, there's a serious problem with the fact that they are intermingling with other rebels who are not moderate at all, including basically an al-Qaeda franchise. And this is one of the reasons that the Obama administration is kind of dragged its feet and, was an excuse not to intervene even, before Jabhat al-Nusra even existed in Syria.
What is the U.S. policy today on Syria, and especially with the tearing of relations between Syria and the U.S. and seeing how it's playing into the U.S. elections? What is the stance today, and what has been Obama's stance?
So that's an excellent question, because now with basically kind of negotiations with Russia falling apart, there really isn't much of a policy. The Obama administration kind of put all the eggs in one basket, counting on diplomacy with Russia achieving the goals that they want to achieve in Syria. And of course, it didn't work, and it was absolutely something that everyone expected, except really Obama and his advisors, who honestly don't care too much about what is happening in Syria. They just, they're on their way out. They don't want to get deeply involved more than they are now. And they're just, passing the buck. And Hillary Clinton, probably, according to polls, the next president, is going to have to deal with something that is much, much worse compared to, when the Obama administration kind of first encountered this problem, when the uprising began.
Much a bigger problem today than it was then.